Give me your best yee.
Yee! We've been yeeing since you guys were 5 years old.
That looks like a camel.
Looks
Nah.
like a what? What did you say to me, boy? Welcome to the Unstoppable Force podcast. I'm Guy.
And I'm Rob. And this week, we're going to be talking about Avengers Endgame. Probably the biggest superhero movie so far.
One of the biggest movies ever, honestly.
Yeah. It definitely ends the franchise in 22 movies and was it 11 years, I think? Because
I think it is 11 years.
Yeah. So
Does it really end the franchise, though? That's the question.
Right. That's true.
Or one of them, at least. So yeah, for this episode, we're just going to review it. We're going to start off with a spoiler-free section, so anybody who's afraid of being spoiled, don't worry about it.
Yeah, if you haven't seen the movie, we won't ruin it for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, what we're going to do is probably just talking about it generally, and we won't reveal anything, but maybe you want to watch it or something. I don't know. We're going to hopefully convince you. If you haven't seen it yet, you're one of the few people that lives under a rock.
I mean, some people don't have time to see it, but okay.
I guess so. I guess so. I guess there's money too. I mean, some people probably it might be a little tight.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, now I just feel bad.
Wow.
Okay, so I guess we can start off with, did you like it?
I loved it.
You loved it?
Yeah.
What would you say would be like your favorite, or?
Well, so in like just the Avengers movies, it's probably like 2 or 3. Because I
Does
still
Captain
put the
America count?
No, I'm just
Civil
talking
War?
about like the Avengers. So
Just
first
Avengers.
then it's Avengers Age of Ultron, then Infinity War, and then Endgame.
Okay.
And I think Infinity War was better. I like that better, but I think the very first Avengers movie is the best of them all.
Really?
I just think that getting that the first time, you just can't feel that again.
So for me, I actually liked this one more than any of the other Avengers.
Okay.
I felt like the first, it's amazing because it was the first time we saw these characters come together.
Yeah.
And it's like very iconic, and that scene that they had where like the camera kind of pans around the 6 of them or 7 of them when they're all fighting in New York City.
Yeah.
It's like the Avengers scene.
Yeah.
That was amazing, and I think that I hated Ultron, by the way.
Okay.
Just to put that at the bottom.
Yeah.
But Avengers Infinity War was also amazing. But just like the scope of this one was so crazy, and it like took everything and dialed up one more notch. And I think that they really, because it was so ambitious, that they ended up doing it really, really well, I thought.
Yeah, but I don't think that it was. I think it like kind of stood. It couldn't stand alone, so I think it really doesn't work if you're just gonna watch it, like, and just call it that. There's a lot more behind it. There's like the entire franchise that props this up, that it's leaning on. So I think that if you didn't know anything else about this, I don't think that there's as much weight in this movie.
Absolutely.
As there is.
No,
so I think that it kind of relies on a lot more than just the movie itself. That's why I think the emotion when you're tied to these characters, you feel more because you know everything else.
Yeah.
There's so many callbacks in this movie that if you don't know a bunch of it, then you don't feel as connected as you could be. So the full potential.
But that's only if you choose not to have watched all the other movies.
Yeah, but.
And you don't even really need to have watched every single movie. You just have to watch, like, at least, like, the Iron Mans. You can skip the first Captain America, basically. Because his character, he's a very stoic character. He's not a very changing character throughout the series.
Yeah, he's
movies.
very consistent in his
He's a
views.
static character.
Here are some TV shows. Killing You.
Perfect.
Just ignore that.
Well, yeah, he's a very morally consistent character, and so you can probably just catch it really well in watching the Avengers only movies.
Mhm.
And even when you do that, this movie doesn't really hold like the emotion there.
Yeah, for being a standalone movie, it definitely can't hold up to something like Avengers, which the original Avengers can stand alone pretty well as
Yeah.
the only movie that you would have to watch. This though, it wasn't meant for that person. It wasn't meant for that casual viewer who maybe didn't see those movies. This movie was meant for the person who has seen every single Marvel movie up
Right.
to this point. That's who they were catering to. And I'm not ever going to advocate for something to go for that casual audience for like the easier cash, like the easier money. And instead goes for the hardcore audience that they know is dedicating that time and effort into like paying attention to every little detail and truly falling in love with these characters.
Yeah.
Um
I don't know. There's just a lot of, I don't know. Fan service is not like a negative thing necessarily, and there was just a lot of that in it that kind of just, I don't know. It didn't really. It's kind of why I don't think it's as good as, let's say, Infinity War is. Infinity War brought this big like villain in to the movie, and just you had to fight it and everybody was there. But now it's like, all right, so now what? You know?
yeah, I guess cuz like this movie, like in the last one, there was so much focus on Thanos, and you get to almost like see his own arc.
Yeah.
And this movie isn't as much about his arc, and it's
Right.
more about like the Avengers sort of reclaiming what they had once potentially, like working together and sort of coming up with like a plan and how to sort of right the world or
True.
however you want to describe it. Um,
Well, so that's kind of also part of why it's not like it kind of actually is slow for like half of the movie
yeah.
because of all this. It doesn't like all the other movies. It's like almost starts off with action in the other movies. This one is just a really slow burn,
It's
and
kind of like a linear line almost where it's like just kind of building and building and
yeah,
building and building, but it's like constantly increasing in
like
its
tension.
tension,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
as it goes.
I agree.
And then it falls off obviously cuz like every movie
Right.
has to have that resolution phase after
Yeah.
the climax.
Yeah.
But up into that climax though, it's just like a straight line going up. I kind of like that though. I feel like for this movie the flow of it, even though it started out slow, as it sort of like all the pieces sort of came together, you were able to maybe forgive some of that setup that felt a little more forced or felt a little bit more like they're trying to, move the way this story is going towards a specific end.
Yeah.
Um, it felt like they had done that very well, so it was more forgivable
Yeah.
than another movie might have been.
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is, this movie didn't really feel entirely like a superhero movie till the later acts
Yeah.
of the movie. So, like, when you compare it to like the other movies, like it doesn't feel like a super movie, till the end. And I mean, I guess that's a good thing if you want it to just feel like a movie. That's like, that's why it could be a good movie. But for me to say that it's better than the other Avengers movie, it doesn't feel like an Avengers movie till later into the movie. It takes a while to get there.
Yeah, there's a lot of like building up.
Yeah. Not to say it's bad. It's just
No.
that's why I rank it like that. Uh, a lot. I think they did a really good job of like showing the different characters, like where they are and how they dealt with like the end of Infinity War, and it was like based in their character. Like really showed the like character progression between all like Iron Man and Captain America and everybody that we saw alive at the end of Infinity War. At least
Yeah.
like when you start off in the movie.
I would say like one of the things that tends to annoy me a lot, especially in like these longer series of movies or if it was like a television show, Like towards the end, sometimes the writers, because they want the plot to move in a certain way or to have a certain outcome, they can sometimes bend characters' personalities
Yeah.
to do things that they wouldn't normally have done. And I think this is a great example of a movie that didn't do that. Just kind of like how you said, the characters felt like the characters, and each of them acted in the way that you might have expected them to act. And even throughout the whole movie, each character's weaknesses that are sort of amplified by the situation that they're in, I think very well reflects what we've been taught about each of those characters up into this point. And was one spoiler scene I can't talk about that I do want to talk about. That's, I think, a really good example of that. But yeah, I think the characters are very consistent, and that made me enjoy it. People were like doing stupid things when they would otherwise wouldn't have done stupid
Right.
things. Like everyone had a good reason to do something.
Right. So I just want to address Captain Marvel in this movie without like going to spoilers, obviously. And there was absolutely no reason to go see Captain Marvel.
Yeah, definitely.
So if
They gave us that impression.
yeah,
It's probably why it sold so well. It wouldn't have sold anywhere near as well if people were informed that
right.
it may not have been as important as we thought. But
Definitely.
no, she is definitely not as big of a part of the movie as I think a lot of people expected
Right.
her to be.
Yeah, but I can't get into spoilers.
Of course,
but
yeah.
basically there was no real interaction or any reason to know who she was or where she came from in this movie at all. It was just another, like, she shows up like in the trailer. They go, "Oh, like where the hell were you?" And it's like, "Oh, that was just other planets. They need saving too." Like, okay, well that's like the feeling. It's like, why are you here if that's like where? That's like the whole feeling. In the
I
movie,
think
so.
like at the end of the day, she is that Superman character, and So I think like power levels is a big part of Marvel, right? Everybody having a different level of power, who is stronger than who.
Yeah.
And they recognize how strong Captain Marvel was and is. And then I think that they wrote around that without making her weak or anything like that, which I think was the correct way to have done it.
Yeah, that's true. Like her character was still the same, like sort of arrogant, like outsider that kind of like was like, oh, I kind of know my shit, so just let me do this.
So overall, if you had to give it like a final review before moving into spoilers, what would you say?
I would give it probably an 8.5 out of 10.
I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10.
Okay. Okay, that's
I stand by that is my favorite. Okay, so now that the spoiler shackles are coming off, and we can speak freely, I want to continue the Captain Marvel conversation
okay.
first.
So if you're still listening and you haven't seen the movie, you should probably not listen anymore and then watch the movie. Then click resume and keep listening to this.
Yeah, just go buy the tickets right now and then go out, watch it, come back, and then continue the video.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Captain Marvel. It was an understatement what you said. She's not in the movie. She's literally has like about like 2 minutes of screen time.
Yeah,
basically.
I mean, she was just a Deus Ex Machina. That was it.
She was a Deus Ex Machina, but the main thing is I already kind of said it, but the power levels thing. Thank God she left. Because if they like either made her really weaker in order to keep her on the planet, or if they made Thanos or like something else really strong, I think it just screws with the whole universe.
Yeah.
And there's just a good reason. I mean, think about it. How many every planet in the entire universe has now lost half of its life.
Yeah.
So I could only imagine that there's probably some crazy shit going on in the universe that we're not seeing, but we don't need to see it. Like, just get her out because she's boring, she's monotone, she's overpowered, so she doesn't have any weaknesses. Like, and I don't love Brie Larson.
Yeah, well, I know we kind of said like
Doesn't
could
seem
have
like
been
the cast
anybody.
does.
Yeah, it could have been anybody anyway. So
I mean, do you see any of the press up to
yes,
release?
I watched a video of like their interview with Don Cheadle with her and Chris Hemsworth. That shit was
Mhm.
hard to watch.
It is really cringe.
But
All of it is.
uh
You can just tell there's just
so
this like awkward tension, or like that they don't click.
right.
Like you see the other ones
Yeah,
previously
absolutely.
in other movies, and everyone just seems like they're having a blast. And then Brie Larson gets in there, and suddenly it's just like the most.
Uh, Everybody's watching like yeah, what they're saying and who's saying what.
Hmm.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think so what like Marvel does is they kind of write themselves into a hole and then they like write the Deus Ex Machina out. So
Hmm.
like that's what they did with the end basically with the giant ship with Captain Marvel. Was like, "Oh, let's just try to shoot down everybody and then this looks like shit's going wrong and then oh, there's Captain Marvel back conveniently after she was gone for so long and then just saves everybody."
I think that there's levels to a Ex Machina. Like there's obviously like the zero Ex Machina, meaning like it was completely set up.
Right.
You had like a lot of storytelling and like time invested into making something seem reasonable later on when it saves somebody else or something like that. That's like the most acceptable form. And then I think there's like this middle form where it's like they sort of set it up. They like maybe, like you knew that there was the power that could do this and that there
Yeah.
was a chance that something could happen, but maybe it's a little far fetched, just a tad. And then there's like ooh, like that was literally the most ridiculous thing. They just straight up wrote themselves out of a corner.
Right.
And I think Captain Marvel coming at the end was kind of more like the second level, where it's
Okay.
like all the Avengers were arriving. She was the only one who hadn't gotten there yet in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
We knew she was gonna come in at some point. We know
Right.
she's the most powerful Avenger
Yeah.
overall. So when she did come in, it wasn't like oh man, I didn't expect that. It was more like there we go.
Okay.
It makes sense. We were waiting for her to come in. So it was
Right.
kind of a little bit more reasonable. I wouldn't say it was like full ridiculous Ex Machina. And then plus she still got her ass handed to her by Thanos. It was tough.
Right. Well, cause he had the stone that he popped out,
Yeah.
and then,
Yeah,
but
because he had I guess that was
power.
like just when he was putting on the
No,
Infinity
he took
Gauntlet.
the gauntlet. No, he had the gauntlet, but then he popped out the power stone,
Mhm.
and in his other fist punched her across like the country, practically.
Yeah, I
But
thought that was pretty cool actually when he like pulls out the stone.
yeah, so I think we should probably break down this movie like sort of chronologically, like
Okay.
in like three parts,
Mhm.
because it kind of does that itself with the beginning before they do the time travel, and then in the whole middle part of the movie when they're time traveling to like find all the stones, and at the
Yeah.
end everybody comes back together. So it kind of does the tonal like shift
Right, it's
amongst
almost
three.
like three miniature movies in one. It's
Yeah.
kind of fascinating actually because they did like that whole 3 hour span. I don't even know. I would love to like time it,
Yeah.
but it could end up being that like it's almost like an hour, which would be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Would be interesting if it is
It's probably like a little off of that, but
about
roughly you
that.
can almost think of it as like the first, third, second, third,
Possibly.
third.
I don't think so. I think this for the beginning was uh or time travel was actually maybe because it was kind of slow, so
Mhm.
maybe it did
It
last so
almost
long.
feels longer.
Yeah. So in the very beginning, when I first watched, when I was in the beginning when they have Hawkeye, and he's showing his daughter to shoot the bow, I was
Mhm.
like, oh no. I was like ready. I was preparing myself right away. I was like,
Uh-huh.
I'm like, this is gonna happen. Like, how are they gonna do this? They're just gonna crush us in the first like 2 minutes of this movie. Oh my god.
Yep.
Waiting for that
At
dust to
least
just
it
happen.
happened off screen.
I know, yeah. I would have been so much worse if we all like saw it or he saw it or anything like
Yeah.
it. And it was like just the feeling of helplessness that he had. He was like, "Where the hell did everybody
Like he didn't
go?"
even get a
Yeah,
chance.
yeah,
It was just like he looked away for a second and his family's gone.
yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah. And that kind of actually sets the tone for the whole
Hmm.
beginning of this movie.
Yeah, they wanted to kind of like start depressing.
Absolutely.
Like they tried to make it as depressing as they could. We kind of like watched him lose his family. And did we watch anyone else lose anybody, or did it kind of
No,
skip? I
no, it
forget.
was.
Yeah.
I think it went right to Iron Man. He was in space right after
Right, and
that.
then it shows him, and that's like a very negative
Absolutely.
tone
Yeah,
as
like he's
well.
about to die. The next day, he goes to go to sleep,
And then
and
Captain Marvel comes in because she's just a plot device to move everybody
yeah,
around.
I think that was kind of the way they solved it because
Yeah.
that was what Rocket's ship. I think that they were using to get back off of Titan. I think so. It makes sense. Like Rocket's on Earth, and
Yeah.
he knows where his ship is. Probably has GPS in it. Like
Mhm.
so he just can't get there. Nobody can get there to go get him. The only person that can do it is Captain Marvel. So it makes a lot of sense. Like it seemed convenient. Like when I first was watching, I was like, oh, of course, this is what they're gonna use her for. But thinking about it again, it just makes a lot of sense that that's
Yeah.
what would happen. Because she would be able to find the ship. It's not like she's finding a needle in a haystack somewhere. She would know where it is because Rocket knows where the ship is.
I don't have any like issues with her like knowing where the ship is. Or even just that in part in general. I just think it's funny that like now that we've seen the movie in its entirety, you kind of realize that Captain Marvel's purpose in it was just to like a few key moments
Yeah.
where she like moves the plot forward like in a way. She almost turned into like it's almost as if Feige created her just to get Iron Man back home,
Okay.
just so that the ship made sense later
Yeah.
on. Like I don't know,
I guess so.
it all worked out well, but it feels like that way a little
Right,
bit.
because she was there. She's like, "Oh, let's go get Thanos." Like, "Oh, you have me," and they go there, and then Thanos is just there, sitting there, content. He just
Mhm.
destroyed the stones. He doesn't care. Like they're just interrogating him, and he's just basically ready to die because he felt like he did his job. His purpose was served. He didn't care. He was gonna die. So she just brought us to that point where then
Mhm.
Thor can feel like because he feels like he did the wrong thing because he didn't kill Thanos. Like everybody feels like they didn't kill him, and then now you have him chopping his head off, and now everybody feels hopeless because they trying to find the stones. They don't know what's gonna happen. Like their only chance that they had was talking to him, finding the stones.
Yeah. Also, it's a little nitpicky, but I thought this was funny. There's like a funny little moment of like a small error. They were like, "Oh, where's Thanos?" After they bring back Iron Man. They're like, "Oh, I don't know." And then well, not Gamora, it's my God, I'm blanking on her
Nebula.
name. Nebula. Nebula is like, "I know where he went, the garden." And then Rocket's like, somebody used the stones 2 days ago on this
Yeah.
planet with these coordinates. It's like,
Yeah, I
you should
know.
have said something 2 days ago, dude.
That's true.
Like, we don't need Nebula. We don't need anything. You have
Yeah, if
coordinates
they
of a
knew that.
planet. Like,
That's true.
I
Like
thought
all
it
of
was
them were
so
saying, like,
funny.
I know where he's gonna be, and then I know where he is.
Rocket's just like, oh, sorry guys, I forgot to mention he used the stones 2 days ago. But yeah, and then they like all go there together. I thought that was actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Because by removing Thanos that early in the movie, it made you kind of be like, wait, so is he not going to be the main bad guy of the movie?
Right.
Like, is this it? Because you don't initially know that they're going to all start going back in time. Well, I guess if you watched the Ant-Man and the Wasp,
Right.
there
You
was like
can
I
kind
think
of
some
know.
speculation
Yeah.
about the quantum realm.
And if you like, I know there's some like those channels that like kind of break down the trailers. Like I've noticed some of them were saying like there's gonna be two different timelines because you have like the
I didn't watch
before and
the
after.
trailers.
Like, oh yeah, I did, obviously, but I did, and then I think over the weekend actually another teaser dropped, and apparently that spoils the movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Ugh.
So I just avoided that. I was like, I'm not gonna watch that now. No, I watched the other stuff, but no, I didn't.
I hate when the companies like spoil movies in
Yeah.
the trailers. I've always been the kind of person who just stays away from the trailer if possible because it's just like the experience of going in with nothing.
Yeah.
Like you get brought on like a roller coaster if you do that because you just have no frame of reference.
Right.
So it's like when I was in the movie and I see Thanos die, I'm like, shit. Like, so what are we gonna go from here?
Yeah,
Like, what's
yeah.
gonna happen from here? And then you go 5 years later, and I didn't even expect that the 5 year jump. And
Right.
Like, so I don't know if that
But-
was that was probably in the trailers, right? The 5-year
Eh,
jump or like some
I mean, there
explanation
wasn't
of it.
really no, there was nothing like that. But what did you think of them just like after that? They're just like, all right, now we're gonna go 5 years later, and we're just here.
I think it was kind of like they just kept wanting to make the beginning like more depressed and more like nihilistic and
Yeah.
pointless,
Yeah,
so that like they can move up from there. So it was just like another reinforcement on that. But I think it was like right at the 5-year turning point that it was actually where like the show or the movie turned from being depressing to hopeful. Because it was at the very first scene was Captain America talking to these people who had lost, I guess,
Yeah.
people that they had loved,
yeah,
and telling them to move on. Or
yeah,
so there was like a moment of like moving on, and then it kind of transferred into like, hey, wait a minute, when Scott comes back.
yeah. Well, yeah, but between then, even like Cap's like, oh, we tell them everybody else to move on, but we can't do that, and it's like they still feel hopeless.
Yeah.
I guess there is like a sort of transition.
Well, because it's Scott.
Yeah,
Scott
is the
coming to
one.
Avengers and being in that like video camera.
Yeah,
That's when it switches to hope.
yeah,
So it starts out with like depression and nihilism,
right.
and like I guess we'll just get over it and move on.
Yeah.
And then Scott shows up
Yeah,
and throws
true.
a monkey wrench in the whole like system.
Yeah. And oh my god, the scene when he comes back and he's like running through all the names, that was very like heartfelt. Like
Mhm.
especially then he's running, he's like, I'm the one that died,
Yeah,
and he's going back and they like
he's one of
really
the
took
lucky.
him. Yeah, which is kind of crazy. But yeah. So then the Ant-Man comes back and even though like, well, I guess he did lose a few because he lost hope.
Oh, yeah,
He was
yeah.
hopeless. But
Yeah.
so then, yeah, like you had Tony Stark, so I don't want to like skip over like when he comes back and he just you think that when he comes back, like this is something that he will, he was gonna be the same person where he's gonna defeat Thanos, but then he was just done. He was defeated, and he was just like, I'm done talking to you guys. This is what happens when you don't listen to me. I'm just
Mhm.
gonna go and live my life. Screw all of you, Captain America specifically.
Yeah, I like how they had him end up with like a kid, because it was like he, even though he had like the tougher time when it initially happened, he moved on,
Yeah,
and now he had something to risk going back into the Avengers,
right.
whereas like other people didn't really have that same feeling of like, oh, if I die, like I'm leaving
Yeah,
behind these people. Like at that point, Ant-Man's daughter was grown up. Like,
yeah.
um,
And anybody that had some, well, I guess Ant Man, like everybody had somebody that they were going to try to get back.
mhm.
So Iron Man, like even though like Peter Parker was gone, now Iron Man made a family and he like forgot about it all the way through up until there's like a glimmer of like, oh, maybe we can go back in time. Then he like runs his simulations. Then he's washing the dishes and he looks at the picture and he's like, fuck, I forgot about the kid. And then that's when he goes and like, there's actually something I need to go do.
Yeah.
That's not just selfish, like him having his family. He like realized what he was doing it for.
Peter is like kind of his family though,
Yeah, his
because
son, basically, he was like he's a
yeah.
very extreme father figure, and this is something that they built with Spider-Man in that movie and in Civil War, kind of Infinity War, and it really
Like
made it.
also Iron Man too. I think it's kind of like this like goes from, I forget his father's name actually.
Howard.
Howard. Yeah, Howard Stark, and how he was as a father to Tony. And then, Tony has like a lot of daddy issues himself. And I think that like when he realized that Peter doesn't have a father figure in his life,
Right.
like he was like, okay, well, if I'm going to be this father figure, I have to be at least a good father figure. I have to do a good job at this. And I think he cared about being essentially his surrogate
Right.
father.
Yeah.
And then when he lost Peter, it was like failing to save his own son.
Yeah.
And so he like had so much guilt from that situation. So once he realized, oh hey, there's actually a chance, and I figured this out,
Yeah.
he couldn't not almost go after it.
True. Yeah. One thing I want to point out is the fate of the universe was left to a rat that crawled
Yep.
across a few buttons in that van.
I guess that's like part of the reason why they did the 5-year gap as well, because it's like back to that Ex Machina kind of thing,
Yeah.
where it's like I guess it brings it into level 2 because you can argue,
Like
well,
any
it did take 5 years for the rat to finally run across the control board.
Right.
Like it could have been a month, it
Yeah.
could have been 2 years, but they chose a number that they felt was maybe more realistic to how many years do you think it would take for a rat to run across the
right, like
control board?
yeah, where would that the control board end up for that to happen or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't really mind that. I just thought
It's
of
funny
all
though.
things, it's like, man, if that didn't happen, then like they'd be all screwed. They'd have
Yeah.
no hope at all, and like we still see them in that first like kind of act
Yeah.
of just being there and just like trying to accept it, and even though they can't, and like there would be nothing for them.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
But then like once they decide to do the whole, I feel like the whole time travel part itself is like, I think they did a really good job with it actually.
Okay.
I think a lot of other
um,
movies don't do a good job with time
Right.
travel, but this one they seem to try to follow the rules a little bit more, and they had some stricter rules as to how theirs work.
Sort of. Well, before we get into this, we can't not address two big green and fat things that showed up in the screen on the way to finding time travel, and that's Professor Hulk, which
Mhm.
when I first saw him was like, what is this abomination I'm looking at on the screen? Okay, it was the weirdest thing I like seen. I was not expecting that at all. And then when you see Thor, it was the funniest shit you've fucking seen.
Oh yeah.
So like
Them coming back together was great.
it was, I mean, like, so that like was also really good about like bringing the team back together, right? But it was kind of not out of place. I don't know. It just felt so different because it was not the same thing. It was everybody's distraught and like Thor's just coping and playing Fortnite and just
That was so funny when they're playing Fortnite.
Yeah. No, they did a good job with that and like showing where like Thor was like, I'm just gonna drink myself and just not really, I'm done. I like did what I could. I'm just gonna live over here. Everybody that I knew that was basically all these Asgardians was like practically dead. I couldn't do anything to help anybody. And then Hulk actually got his sort of resolution with like Bruce Banner and Hulk got their resolution.
Yeah.
Kind of before we even meet them. So that was good, but I don't know, it wasn't as fulfilling, I guess, because you didn't really see that. He just explains it like, oh, I was fighting it. Like I guess like he was just in that one like conversation where he's like, oh, I was fighting with the Hulk. I thought he was a problem, but now I just embraced it in the best of two worlds, and that was it. And it's like, all right, we're just gonna accept this.
I think the idea was that after the 5 years, they each character, like the writers asked themselves, what would happen to these guys in 5 years? Like what type of person are they going to be? Like where do their minds go?
Right.
Based on their like characters. And I guess you could like maybe say like after the events of Infinity War, Banner might have had like, because he had such a difficult time having Hulk come out
Yeah.
in that movie. Initially he rejected it, and then when he needed it he couldn't get it.
Right, because he like, yeah, so then he realized he was just like using it. Like
Yeah, he had to look at it not as a separate form of himself, but rather as simply like a part of him as a whole.
Yeah.
And so his self-reflection following those events is what led to him being able to find the peace between those two worlds. So I was like, it was kind of weird, and I'm like, whoa, I did not expect that. But I could understand like how his character changed as a result of those events.
It was good. It was kind of glossed over a little bit.
Yeah. I mean,
and
everything was sort of glossed over there because they were just
True.
like, it was already so slow. They didn't really want to spend more time.
That's true. Well, I mean, like with the Hulk, like afterwards, I was like okay with it. Like it was like shocking to see at first. That's all it was. It was like seeing this and like Bruce Banner's face just talking on the Hulk, like so, and with like a fucking 5 o'clock shadow. It was like kind of
Yeah.
weird. I was like, whoa, the CGI looks weird from here. then just over time you just
Kind of look like a deep fake or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Like
Just like a little bit.
like initially it was like, oh, this is just Mark Ruffalo talking and there's the Hulk body, but over time, like right after that scene, like okay, this like the Hulk like seemed really like as a whole and like a person and
Mhm.
inside this universe, it didn't really didn't really separate the two. It like really worked.
I don't actually remember him being a huge part in the final battle either, Hulk.
No, because he was damaged with his arm. He couldn't really
Right,
do
yeah.
much. When we get to there, I kind of have a problem with like the whole gauntlet thing. But let's just continue on. With,
Okay.
like the way we're going.
So, I guess let's jump into the whole time travel part.
Yeah. So like you were saying that they kind of did it differently and they had stricter rules. Kind of not really, because they kind of shat on the stricter rules. They're like, don't bet on anything and don't talk to yourself. They kind of went with more like the multi-timeline type thing.
There was like one point though I remember where when they all started quoting like every movie of all time, like, well, you mean that's not how it works? That's how it worked in Terminator. That's how it worked in Back to the Future. And basically they said like, no, that's not how time travel works.
Right.
And they actually decided to go with more of a like the multiverse theory, but more like the verse line theory, rather than it being like these branches constantly.
Yeah.
It's more like we're gonna go into somebody else's timeline
Yeah.
while our time exists separate from it.
Yeah.
So anything we do in this timeline will affect this timeline, but if we go back to our timeline, nothing changes.
Right.
So that's why they didn't have to worry about making paradoxes. And they were basically taking the stones from that other timeline, quickly using them in theirs, and then returning them back in those exact positions so that they don't break time and space.
I think they kind of cheated, actually, now that you kind of mention this, is because they just put everything back in the same exact spot. It's like they were never really there, and we didn't really see the effects of anything that changed, because the only thing that really changed was Loki, that he disappeared, like with the Tesseract. When they were trying to get it, and then he just uses it and it goes away. Everything else was kind of the same, and then Thanos came from there to come to the time that they were.
Mm-hmm.
But other thing changed was Captain America staying there and appearing on the bench, later. So I don't know. I think they kind of just putting something back in place that they took, like you wouldn't see that effect, and because that. In the timeline in like the normal timeline, they're gonna go back and put it in the same exact spot. Nothing should change, and because nothing should change, they didn't have to put anything new or different or explain anything. So basically, they went like a normal timeline, and said, "Oh, we just put them back," and that was it. And so like it's not like the stones were actually gone, because they were still all there, and all the things that happened will still happen because they went back and left everything essentially back the same that they had it before. So they kind of cheated, and instead of saying like, oh, it's not the way it works, meanwhile they're accepting that's how it works, and they're going to fix it, because they're going to put that back to where it was.
It's not. I can understand why you're saying it's like cheating, because I think that it definitely, you're right, makes it easier overall. The way that the method that they used of time travel made it less messy. But the thing is I'm pretty sure that's how it works. And like, I'm not any sort of expert on time travel, but there's a lot of theories on time travel, and one of them is the idea that there are no paradoxes, and that you technically cannot go into the past, like actually at all.
Right.
And instead, you're just going to another universe that's almost identical in every way, shape, and form as yours, but maybe that universe started 20 years later.
Right.
So it's 20 years in the past, but it's not actually 20 years in the past. It's really just another universe that if you went from the very beginning of the universe to now, it's the same time, essentially. So they're going into this other universe. They're taking this other totally separate timeline's stones out of it. And they get to do whatever they want in that timeline because it has no effect on theirs. And then if they then go back into that timeline and re-put the stones in, that's the only part where it starts to break up, because theoretically they can't fix that timeline if they do something in it.
Right.
Within like what would be considered realistic.
So like,
within that
Are they
rule set.
going back to that same exact timeline? Or are they going to another timeline?
Right.
So like, are you gonna put it back the stones in this other timeline that is the same as the other timeline that they took the stones from? Which kind of
Which would mean that the timeline also that they went even further back to go to get the stone, the
could've been a different
Tesseract,
one. Yeah.
because they couldn't get it because Loki got away with
Yeah.
it. That would be a totally another timeline
Right.
because, I mean, because that therefore it couldn't technically be that era in the same timeline.
Well, it could
as
be.
It was as the other era.
I mean, it could be
if it's following that rule set, but it's not. That's the only
I
kind
mean,
of rule it broke.
they could, and they could also not be going to that same exact timeline where they were going before.
I guess they could just need to put it back.
Yeah, they were navigating time to go there. So whether they're going to that same timeline or a different timeline, that's the same, except for something different. Then that's how they'll do it. But the thing that makes it, I guess, kind of not the way I was explaining it is Nebula kills herself, her past self. So, and then she doesn't disappear the way you would, in like Back to the Future.
Right, because that means that other timeline now doesn't have a Thanos and now doesn't have a Nebula.
Yeah.
And it also
took Gamora basically because Gamora probably is gonna stay with Guardian. She's
right. Well, did you say? I mean, she could go back.
She wouldn't stay with Thanos, or she would probably stay with Nebula. So they're all
that's
probably
actually true.
with Guardians. I think they were.
So now Quill has to like recourt her.
Yeah, that is the weirdest thing that I feel like we're gonna see. But
so it's kind of, I think what basically happens if we had to guess, I think that timeline that they took the stones from, it continued when they left.
Yes.
And I guess they can't really put it back in the exact same spots that they took it, but I guess they could return them.
Yeah.
And then they could probably go back to where they took the Tesseract and just put it back.
Yeah.
Because maybe like a day or two went by since they took it. But yeah, I mean, within the ability to switch between those timelines, every single one of them should continue to move forward, regardless of which one you're in. But they were just like, time is just so difficult to work with as an element in storytelling that you almost just have to put your disbelief on like the side and just be like, okay, I understand this is not going to be realistic, and even if they get like 75% of the way there, 80% of the way there, it's still better than most other fiction.
Yeah.
So I was content with the way they did it, and they didn't follow like, they even made fun of like Terminator. They made fun of those. They decided to do it different, which was cool.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I think they did it very well. Initially when they were doing it, it felt kind of weird to me, out of place. I don't know, cause like it would, like, didn't feel like any other movie. Like, even if it was like kind of heisty to set up everything and to go do this stuff, and everybody's they have their own like, oh, we have to go get the stone over here, we can go get the stone over there. Like then it was just like, I don't know when it like changed. I think when it changed over for me was when shit started hitting the fan. So like when the Tesseract kind of was, Loki took it and left, and then when Cap had to fight himself, or like when he goes into the elevator and you think he's gonna fight everybody, all that like kind of like back into the universe. Like when you're seeing it from a third perspective, another perspective other than the movie you saw it originally, I kind of felt like weird. And then when they started kind of interacting with everybody, then it kind of rolled, I think, better.
So you're saying like when they were sort of playing it like Harry Potter third movie style, where they're like, oh, we're gonna go into another, but we can't be seen.
Yeah.
We can't like mess anything up. And then that kind of just got full shit the fan.
Yeah.
And then once the two were interacting, the two timelines, that's when you kind of started to enjoy it more.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I think that's basically.
Inadvertently spoiled maybe a bit of Harry Potter 3, but I don't think anyone cares.
It's been that long, man.
10-year spoiler warning? Was it a 20-year spoiler warning? So I don't know. It's been a while.
So I want to point out that when they were deciding who had to go get the stones, they knew that somebody had to go die to get the Soul Stone.
Well, nobody was there when the Soul Stone was actually gotten, other than Gamora and Thanos.
Yes, but Nebula said that he left with Gamora and came back with the stone, and that was it.
Yeah, that's probably like a bit of a continuity error there then. because they're just like, oh yeah, go ahead, Scarlet or
And Hawkeye,
Hawkeye, yeah.
and Black Widow.
That's what I was talking about in the spoiler-free area,
Okay,
by the
good.
way, where we're talking about consistency in characters.
Yeah.
Because I thought that scene was like fun, because like
Yeah.
we got there and we just knew that neither of them
Would
were gonna.
and I didn't know who was gonna do it. I'm like, Hawkeye's gonna fight definitely fight to go,
Mhm.
and that he's probably gonna lose. That she's probably gonna die because he has like
Kids.
yeah. That's just
You want to see that, at the
right.
end.
So like we're
And
gonna
she's
get
got
that.
no family.
Yeah.
She's got no history.
Yeah.
The Avengers is her family, and I think dying for her family is her greatest way of giving back,
Right.
because they were like the first people to have given her that feeling
Yeah.
of like actually caring about another human being.
Definitely.
So I think that was really impactful, that scene for me, and I think that the fact that they were very much in character and they were like, "No, I'm gonna kill myself. No, I'm gonna kill
Yeah.
myself." But the only thing I had an issue with in that scene was that I was starting to get really emotional about it,
Yeah.
and then it moved towards that action comedy like scenes where they're like fighting each other and who's
Yeah.
gonna like kill themselves first.
Yeah.
So then it kind of brought me out of it, and then I kind of brought
Back
me
in, right? Yeah,
when she
because
died.
when he's holding on, and
Mhm.
like you knew that was gonna happen, it starts getting emotional again. Yeah, I thought it worked.
It
Like,
did work.
and that's basically it.
I was
think
just
for
like
that scene,
starting to like tear up,
Yeah,
and then I kind of was brought out of it. But then
Yeah.
it's almost that like laughing, crying.
you're
You're
like
like,
trying to figure out, and you're also trying to figure out what's gonna happen, like
Uh-huh.
because you don't know. It's like instead of being like, oh no, I need to go sacrifice myself, and somebody goes and does it. Like that's very simple to go through. But when they're both fighting to go die, and you know what the stakes are,
Mhm.
it was like tears like each way. You're like, oh no, like you feel this way and that way. You're just like, how's this gonna end?
Mhm. We should probably move into the third area.
Okay, we can do
'Cause,
that.
we
I
pretty
just
much
wanna
covered all the
transition-
center.
transition into it a little
Time
bit,
travel
and
stuff.
and I really liked how in the time travel when Nebula is in her timeline and like she connects with herself, like Bluetooth interruption with
That
the
was a
Wi-Fi.
clever way.
Yeah, I thought that
of
was awesome.
doing that.
I thought that was really awesome.
See, that's the thing. Like, I think this movie was filled with moments like that, like Scott Lang coming back out of the
Yeah,
van,
yeah.
and then like having the method of time travel, Nebula having that connection, and then Thanos knowing about how time ended up turning out in that other universe. Any moments like that where you know that its purpose is to like move the plot into that next stage.
Yeah.
It never really felt like super contrived. It
Yeah.
always had some element of realistic, like, okay, that actually makes sense. She's a cyborg. She's
Yeah.
half
Yeah.
robot. So if there's another version of her that maybe like they can share information,
Yeah,
'cause
like
they're
memories.
essentially-
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was really cool. And that was a
her
great...
memories is stored in the cloud.
Yeah, that's that's good. Yeah, I thought that was an awesome way to get Thanos from that timeline into the same timeline to like really like when he comes back and he's like, all right, I'm inevitable. Like this is what's gonna happen. You're gonna get destroyed because obviously what I did isn't gonna work. So now let me double down on it and like go all out and just destroy it and restart from zero. And I thought that, and this is what made it really, really good. So we kind of knew going into this that everybody was gonna come back, or so we thought. Like Spider-Man has another movie, he's gonna come back. Black Panther has another movie, we're assuming he's gonna come back. Everybody's gonna come back. They're gonna solve that.
Yeah.
What we didn't know is what happens when Thanos also is now there again, and what happens if he gets the gauntlet? Like, is the same people gonna die? Is other people gonna die? What's gonna happen? So they really built that back up in the movie.
Yeah, I think they made us believe that it was going to be the Thanos that we fought in Infinity War was going to be the same Thanos that we fought in Endgame.
Right.
So like a lot of people were like, well, he's weak. He's not going to be able to fight that well. So he didn't seem that as intimidating, and they were like, well, what are we going to do here? And then immediately when they kill him off, you're just like, oh, I don't even know who the bad guy is. But then when they have that situation with Nebula, you're like, got it. Now,
Right.
so we're gonna get like full strength Thanos that 1v1 the Hulk and basically kicked the Hulk's ass.
Yeah.
And I was wondering too when he was like sitting down, like put the helmet on his like double-sided sword
Yeah.
and was just like, I'm gonna chill. You could tell he was just like waiting for the Avengers to come to him.
Yeah.
I was like, I really hope that he's not like a bitch now that he doesn't have the Infinity Gauntlet
yeah.
because he 1v1 Hulk.
Yeah.
So when he ended up like being insanely tough to beat,
Yeah.
even in his normal form, I was actually pretty happy about that.
Oh, in this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it took, Captain America wielding Mjolnir.
Yeah, how'd you feel about that? Because I've heard like a little bit of mixed. Like, is he really
honestly neutral because of a few things. Between knowing that he does it in the comics, kind of expecting it, between in I think Age of Ultron when they're trying to pick up the hammer and it nudges, like they're kind of pointing towards it. I kind of thought of it, so I wasn't totally surprised. I thought it was awesome, like him like using it. I thought it looked a little weird when he was spinning it. It looked out of place for a second, but him like just actually using it, kicking ass, so that was awesome. I think that's like he could be worthy. It's fine.
I think it was he's worthy.
Oh, absolutely. I thought it was awesome. I think the whole like with Thor and him, and like, no, I get the big one, or like you get the small one. That was good. Like I thought it worked well. I thought it was awesome. I think
it also matched with like the shield and his fighting style.
Yeah.
I thought really well, and it complemented the way that he fought. I did not expect his shield to be broken by Thanos, though. I was impressed that so I was like, okay, so Thanos is even stronger than I thought he was.
Yeah, or like his double-sided sword has vibranium or something stronger.
Yeah.
But
it's probably maybe because I think vibranium can beat vibranium.
Yeah, so
I don't know
like
if there's another.
Like they also showed how strong Thanos is. Like that.
Yeah.
Like it took him having the hammer and like the shield getting destroyed. Like even though we saw Captain America kind of hold his hand in Infinity War for a second, hold Thanos' hand for a second, but now when he's equipped with this stuff, he's still getting like shit kicked out of him. That really like still showed the true power of Thanos.
Yeah, I think in Infinity War they had him be really strong against Hulk, but then when they were like, okay, well we want our team to be able to stop him from snapping, so we'll down his power for those few scenes where they're trying to hold his hand back or whatever. A little bit. 'Cause I know, like you said, like Captain America
but I don't think
was able to hold that, and I don't think Captain America was able to do that.
See,
in this
that's
because
I think he was more like. I mean, there's a theory that in that movie, like Thanos was more like sort of like surprise / like, where like he just like, oh, this, like he feels the passion from stopping him, and he doesn't, like, he's not gonna kill him unless he's in the way, and he's not really that much of a threat. So Thanos is just, all right, like, I could just smack you away right now, but like this is like sort of impressive, and your heart's in the right place, kid, type of deal. I think that was sort of the excuse, I guess, maybe some of the theory.
But yeah, that final fight I thought was really cool because they brought Thanos back in. They had his whole ship like get through the time travel device in like a way that was like almost plausible.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh yeah, we win, guys, we did it. And then like the entire place just gets destroyed.
I thought like Ant-Man was dead. I thought like Rhodey was gonna die. All that shit was gonna happen.
I thought that too, because they make it look like when for example, Ant-Man.
Yeah, look, he like ragdolled across the whole thing. I was like, dude, that's no way he survived that.
I wouldn't have minded it if like somebody got injured a bit.
Yeah.
But they kind of just were like, they shrugged it off for the most part.
Yeah. Ant-Man definitely shrugged that off, and he shouldn't have, honestly.
No.
It made sense, like Rhodey, like, and a Rocket, he was trapped, and like that whole thing, that was like, all right. And like Hulk, he's hurt.
It's Hulk.
Well, he just used the gauntlet.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he just used the gauntlet, right? So then that should happen. So he's injured. He's weakened from the gauntlet.
You had a problem with that, though, you said.
Okay, so my issue with what happened with now Professor Hulk is the Hulk, he was able to the gamma radiation and like supposed to protect him or whatever. The thing about the Hulk is he gets stronger when he's injured, or like that's what kind of saves him. So when he's more injured, so when like if he had the gauntlet on and he wasn't Bruce Banner in there, and it was just the Hulk hulking out when he had the gauntlet on, like yeah, he wouldn't be able to control it, right? But he doesn't have that same power level. He's not the Hulk that we knew before.
He's
So
only like halfway.
yeah, yeah. So he doesn't get that. When I get more hurt, I get more angry and more strong. So that didn't help him be able to use the gauntlet as well as they wanted to.
Right.
Not only that, but I also thought Thor should have had it because Thor took the whole power of a fucking sun onto his ass, okay, in the previous movie. And he was going to be able to handle that, okay?
Probably,
so when he
yeah.
says he's the strongest Avenger, that he wasn't really lying, probably at least.
I mean, he's a god.
Yeah.
Like he should be. He's like the other Avenger, along with like Hulk if he's like angry.
Yeah.
With like Captain Marvel, they're
Yeah.
like the three strongest. I mean, I also didn't think he should have gotten injured as badly as he did.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say like I guess like Thanos is supposed to be just as strong as the Hulk, and he got kind of wrecked by it. But the Hulk said it himself. He's supposed to absorb gamma radiation, and he got injured
just putting it on
as bad.
Well, he got injured putting it on. He was getting hurt all the way up while he was putting it on. But that didn't happen with Thanos, and then it didn't happen with Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Which is like he would have been collapsing trying to snap his finger.
Mhm. And he actually like didn't he do it like pretty like leisurely? Like
he's like, "Oh, I am Iron Man." And then
the guy's like, "I am inevitable."
Yeah.
And he's like, "I am Iron Man."
Yeah, but he like waits like 3 seconds to say Iron Man. So that was kind of the main thing that was like made like took Hulk out of the fight almost entirely. And Thor like, oh, you just have fat like cheese whiz running through your veins. Like, does he become less powerful just because he's fat and eats all this shit?
Didn't seem like it. Maybe like
No.
one small step down, but he seemed to be just as powerful.
Yeah.
Like his muscles weren't gone. You could still look very muscular.
Right. And like his power level as far as like god power is still there. He doesn't become less godly, so he wouldn't be able to do it. They should have had him do it.
Yeah, so I thought like that final fight lived up to what they built to.
Yeah,
up into this point in like the whole series, and like there was the whole like relay race like with the gauntlet that was
like
cool.
a kill the carrier type deal.
Yeah.
I thought it was so much fun.
And they made it like really where like every character in this series played a part in this whole movie in some grand fashion, whether it was like Hulk using the gauntlet or Iron Man's sacrifice, or Scarlet's sacrifice, Black Widow's, or how Hawkeye was like a joke about how he wasn't even in like Infinity War at all, but then they gave him this big role in this movie, and like almost every person in the entirety of the MCU that has like been one of our favorite characters, other than like Nick Fury, who for some reason they didn't have in the final fight, which is weird to me. Not that he could do anything.
No, and I thought it was fine when he came back.
I just thought
he was back
we would
in the
see
end.
him.
Yeah.
But like everyone got to play a part, and I think when Tony died, I was just like, that is the perfect person to have died.
Oh yeah.
Because he was like the reluctant hero of the MCU, in my opinion. Like where in the original Marvel movie, he's the one who went up and sacrificed himself. He went through like the whole PTSD.
Yeah.
He's the one with the daddy issues. He's the one who is like this like ego with depression directly behind it.
Yeah.
And he's like this character that we've empathized with for so long, and we've come to love, and he sacrificed himself.
Yeah.
It was kind of epic in that sense.
So, well, I have an issue with that little scene because Pepper Potts cock blocked my tears. Okay, because I was so invested in the Tony and Peter relationship, and like even like all the other Avengers, like Captain America and Thor, that like so we had like the Peter like it comes talk to him and he's like sitting there and like start tearing up, and then it's like Pepper Potts comes in and I'm just like I had no connection. Like for me, it was really Tony had like if it had been the other way around, I would have felt it because Tony did care more about like her. Like we felt that from his perspective, and like a lot of it was like he was being reckless, and then she just cared about him. But like there's nothing leading up to
They
like
didn't
feeling
build
that
up her
at all,
loving
and
him
so kind of
that
it really
much.
like interrupted that like kind of emotion at least for me. And then when it cut to Cap and Thor there, then it brought it back because it was like those were the people that we were all with, together fighting. Like when they were gonna go die together, and then obviously Peter because it was a father figure, and then like the basically the opposite happened in Infinity War, and it just felt so heavy that I think she was just I don't know. Like it was necessary because of the character, but I didn't like it because it didn't really feel as emotionally invested in it.
So I totally think that she was not built up well throughout the MCU as being somebody who loved Tony. Like there was always it was like a reluctant love.
Yeah,
It was always like kind of like she'd be annoyed with him,
yeah, and I
but then still also care about him. So I think like we never really had too much investment in their
yeah,
relationship.
yeah,
Um, but at the same time, like hearing her be like, "You can go, like you can go on now. You can be at
yeah.
peace." I think that resonated with me on like a personal level. So I when she said that, that's actually when I had hit my
Mm-hmm.
peak
Yeah,
of like feels.
yeah, yeah.
Was like right after that line
Okay.
of the like you can move on.
Yeah, yeah.
That was when I was like, um,
I just thought she also just doesn't have good acting. So, I don't know. It really
yeah,
kind of ruined it for me, man.
I thought that there was a little dry too. I thought about that as she delivered it, and I was getting sad. I was like, even though I like knew I was sad, and I thought it was like a good
Like,
line,
yeah.
there was also a part of me that was like, was also a little weird
I
delivered.
had felt more emotion in when Scarlet Witch comes back and you see the rage and emotion inside her
Mm-hmm.
going after Thanos. Like that just little part right there had me
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god, this is going to happen. This is going to get the feelings out that we were feeling
I love
before."
how powerful she
Yeah,
was
yeah,
too.
dude.
Like, I know I've already said it, but the power levels in this movie were so well done, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Like Scarlet Witch was stronger than
Oh
Thanos.
yeah.
Like she, I mean, everybody who you expected to be like stronger than the other person, like it was actually very accurate.
Yeah.
And watching Scarlet Witch just start chucking rocks at him and like pick him up into the sky with her like powers, and he's like struggling, and she like was gonna kick his ass.
Absolutely.
I actually forgot to put Scarlet Witch up there with like Thor and like Captain
Oh yeah, she's
Marvel,
definitely up there. Yeah, I
and
forgot.
Hulk.
Put that up there too.
She's definitely on this other level, and I'm sure Marvel is like afraid to use her to her full extent because she's just too. She's more powerful than we think she is. She also has like she's a mind controlling ability. She's telekinesis and telepathy,
Yeah.
right? And not
Like
even
energy sort of
and yeah,
right
like
that's like
energy transfer
yeah,
control.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like so many powers in one.
Yeah.
Um, so what did you think of the wind down? I thought that that was where things maybe felt a little weirder because they were trying to wrap it up after that big epic moment.
Um uh, so like right after Tony dies, like what is there something between that and the funeral? Or is that like kind of just like it? Because they
I
kind of
think it just goes to the funeral.
yeah, well like I thought that was fine like scene and then even like um with Happy and his daughter and it was like I want a cheeseburger or right or hamburger whatever and
Mhm.
then he goes I'll get you all the cheeseburgers you want and that was a callback to Iron Man when he was come back from the cave all he wanted was that and I was like that had more feels than that too because
Mhm.
like that was like original and like you felt that because anytime he called back to Iron Man like original like how it started that like felt really good.
Kind of crazy how it started with the first Iron Man movie.
Yeah, had to end with Iron Man. So
Yep.
okay, so then
Started and
winding
ended.
down. Okay, so what happens is, um, Captain America has to go back, right?
Yeah.
Who brings the stones? Has to bring the stones and Mjolnir back because um, I knew right away that he was going. without that, without even like from like a
It
terms.
also kind of broke the whole rules of the time travel again, where they were going to a
So
different
here,
universe.
let me
Did he
explain.
come? I guess he could have gone back to this universe like
So like,
an hour
so this is like
before or
his
something.
timeline, right?
Yeah.
So he's going back to his timeline if he's in this timeline.
Well,
So this
no,
is
because he
another.
had to go into a different timeline to return the stones, and then he stayed in that timeline.
Yeah, but that's the same thing as this timeline because he ended up being old on the bench.
Right, because he still got older, but then he had to have returned from that timeline back to this
He
timeline
didn't.
at some point.
Yeah, because it was always this timeline.
Because he
That's
can't
the
go
thing.
back in time to this timeline, if that makes sense.
Well,
We knew
the
that it was a
implication is
different
that he
timeline.
did.
Right, no, that's the implication, but that's what I'm saying. I think they messed that up a little bit because they could have given like some information or
Right.
something.
But
we were specifically told by the wielder of the time stone. I don't remember her name.
Oh, the
woman.
chosen one or something like that.
Chosen one.
I don't.
We were specifically told
I don't
that was a
think-
completely different individual line of time, completely separate from this other line that they existed in. He had to go back. He had to go into that timeline to return the stones because that's where
Yeah.
most of the stones came from.
Yeah.
Even if he stayed there, he could still get older,
Yeah.
and then he could just return back to the current timeline.
No, but he didn't return to the current timeline.
Well,
Because how would he come back? No, we didn't watch him anything. He just appeared because the way they had it, he went back in time and he stayed there in time and he
Does
was in his
that
timeline.
mean that he was just sitting on the bench that whole time that they were talking before Cap even went back in time? Because he would have been there for like I mean, how long was he there? How was he there for a day? Was he there for a month? I mean, he's an old guy. He's got to eat, right? Like, where did he
No.
pop up there? Like, how did he get there?
He was there around the
It's
same
just
time.
dramatic effect,
I
in
know
my opinion.
that he was sitting there.
Yeah, like
I mean,
they didn't want to.
They didn't know who he
explain
was.
it.
Some guy was just sitting there when they were in the park.
Yeah, that could be like they just were there.
Um,
But at some point, like there was a specific time that he came back from this other timeline to
Look,
our timeline.
I think
and
that
chilled on
I
a
think
bench.
you're saying that, but
For
I think
dramatic
that's not what
effect.
happened. I think that for the movie purpose, he went back in time in this timeline and stayed there. I think that
But that's
you're
not
just
the rules of this timeline.
So they got it wrong. So you don't explain
Okay,
something
fine,
wrong.
fine.
You're explaining it wrong the way they're explaining it. Because the way they set it up is that he went back and he stayed there. And he
Right.
lived his life and he's there now in this timeline.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's how they set up the rules, that's what that happened to Captain America. That's it.
Yeah, that's the impression that they were trying to give you in the end was that he was still like he just went back in time and then just chilled and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, so I mean, I don't know if this helps with filling any hole in, but I can imagine or figure that he went back in time and he just stayed at the point where originally when Captain America goes into the ocean and freezes, he just shows up back alive, stays with her.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, actually,
wouldn't
that's
break
true.
anything, right?
So what he could have done then is he went into those other
He also
timelines.
exists in so he exists in, let's say it's this timeline, right? Okay, and he goes back and Maggie Carter, right? He has a relationship with her, and then she grows old and dies, and he's there, and then you have Captain America that was frozen, still exists and does his shit, same time.
Well, see, wait. Okay, repeat what you were saying. Sorry.
Okay, so Captain America, in this timeline, still gets frozen, right?
Yeah.
So Captain America gets frozen, and at the same time Captain America gets frozen, the future Captain America fills in right there with Maggie Carter and has a life with her.
Yeah.
Okay, so then in 2012, when he comes unfrozen, that still happens.
Well,
And then
see, the issue becomes though is that's where the paradox gets created, and that's what they were trying to avoid with the earlier rules that they ended up breaking for dramatic effect.
Yeah, but what paradox?
So basically, imagine this: if he did appear back when he went into the ice,
Okay.
and instead lived his life with I forget her
Maggie
name. What was it?
Carter.
Maggie Carter. Then we wouldn't have had those scenes when he did get him out of the ice, where she
Was in
hadn't
bed.
seen him in like all those years, and then he would be like a different person because his experiences with Maggie would have been different, and Maggie would be like, well, "I just lived a whole life with you. Why are you
Mm-hmm.
young?" And then like it would completely change the
Mhm.
events of the entirety of the timeline. So our current timeline can't exist if he lived in it and lived with Maggie Carter, because then he would have changed everything that he ever touched in the entirety of that history, completely changing the course of events. So the only way for it to be plausible is that he popped in back into our universe like 30 minutes before Captain America went back in time.
Yeah.
That's the only way it wouldn't break anything completely. But even then, it still does. But
Doesn't make sense. So this is one big thing. Yeah.
they just wanted the cool scene of the old guy on the bench.
And then
being
passing
him.
off Captain America's shield to
Yeah.
Falcon.
It
Cool.
still worked, like, in the sense that it was like a nice scene.
Yeah.
And it was kind of cool to see him as old.
Yeah.
And it was like a way, I think, to have like our like three of the biggest characters die. Essentially, we had Black Widow,
Yeah.
and then Iron Man, and then Captain America.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the old guard, like
Yeah,
the
exactly.
original,
Yeah.
like three from the
First
very
one.
first few.
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah. And then you have like Hulk, which we don't even know where did he go after. Is he still just there?
I forget if we see if his he was just in a cast. His arm was just like in a cast.
And then we
saw him
don't
at
know
the
where he
funeral.
goes. Okay.
That was it.
You have
And then
that,
it just sort of
and then
ended. It ended with the Captain America handoff, right?
He hands it off. And yeah, because then then Bucky's just there, and that was it. I think that was it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe they just do something else like right after. No, I think that is actually how it ends.
Yeah. Because because Hulk is there doing the time travel stuff with the other two, with Bucky and Sam. So
Mhm.
then they're there talking to old Cap, and then Hulk's just there. Then now we're just left with like where. Oh no, we have a Guardians. We have a.
Thor going with the Guardians.
Yeah, and you have Peter and him like saying, "I'm in charge here."
Mhm.
That was funny.
You can tell like Thor is just so messing with him.
Oh yeah.
And it's amazing because Peter is like insecure about whether or not he's leader or not.
Yeah.
So he's just messing with him. It's great.
Yeah.
So you wanted to address the issue of like where do we go from here?
Yeah. So I'm gonna start with bringing with still kind of the end of the movie where Cap brings the stones back, and I had a conversation about this, that if he goes back and he puts the Soul Stone back exactly where it was, is he just putting it back and nothing happens, or does he go back and put it and now Black Widow's back?
I don't think so. I don't think they're gonna like retcon that, but that's definitely something that they overlooked because the Soul Stone is acquired in such a specific way.
Yeah.
It's kind of odd to like go back and be like it's almost as if like the Red Skull is like you have to sacrifice, Scarlet dies, and then like Cap pops in and goes, hey, here you can have this back. It's like, do you want the girl? No, keep her, keep her. And then like leaves or something. Like I don't even know. So that's kind of like weird that they don't really explain that.
Yeah, and that the thing is, he went back after the funeral. No, he went back before the.
It was after the
funeral because he was there. Right. Okay.
It was like I think they like did the
You
funeral and then it swapped over to like Happy and the daughter talking, and then it moved to.
Well, I thought they were doing that all at the
going back.
end, right away, to bring
Mhm.
the stones back.
Actually, I think you might be right that Captain America wasn't there when they put the thing in the water. Like,
Yeah,
Tony
he
has a
wasn't
heart
there.
and
So
cuts it off.
then Black Widow wasn't there either in the funeral, meaning that
Mhm.
she didn't come back.
Yeah, no, she was dead.
So, so I guess the movie they're making is origin movie.
It's supposed to be a prequel.
Okay. That
So-
kind of answers that.
I have one theory. The only thing in the entire movie that hinted towards a possible greater threat for them to actually have that would be interesting for them to fight
Yeah.
was what that woman said about the chosen one said about the timeline. She said something very interesting that I thought was very fascinating.
Yeah.
And that was that if a timeline doesn't have any of the Infinity Stones, it becomes like
Off the
dark,
yeah.
you know, and that there's like some great darkness that the stones were protecting or
Yeah.
were like, you know, together, like
Yeah.
those who were against it could use the stones to protect
Yeah, I see where you're
themselves.
going.
And guess whose timeline doesn't have any
There's
Infinity
yeah,
Stones?
yeah. Their timeline doesn't have any because they were destroyed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they took somebody else's stones, they gave them back, but they don't have any stones.
Yeah.
And we have no idea what this great evil that the stones were
True.
protecting.
Yeah.
And it seems like Thanos may have completely overlooked that in his plan because he's not the chosen one who has like
Yeah.
the knowledge of all of time.
Yeah.
So it's possible that we may see like some building towards some even
Yeah.
greater like super evil darkness
true.
or something.
So I also want to point out, they probably could have brought Tony back with this,
Probably.
and it wouldn't have felt as impactful. But just saying.
It would have been it would just be more contrived already. Like it's so
No, just-
hard to like deal with the time travel stuff, and the more like layers you add, the
Not
more
really. You just
ridiculous
put
it
the
gets.
no. You just put the glove on like Thor. He snaps his finger. Then Tony wakes up. That's it.
Is that? I guess. I mean,
That's all.
the thing is that you couldn't bring back Scarlet. You couldn't
That's fine
bring
because
back.
that's different. Or Gamora. Like well, that's because the stone was the currency, right? The
Right.
soul was the currency for the stone. But this is just somebody that died. You can bring that person back.
Well, I think. I mean, I don't know the mechanics of the gauntlet, the Infinity Gauntlet itself, but I think that the way that everyone was able to be brought back was that essentially they never died.
That's okay. That's,
Even though they disappeared, I
No,
think
I
what
know.
it was is like they were
I-
essentially stored within the Soul Stone or something. Like
I mean,
the
look.
souls of those who were removed.
Okay, they didn't explain
So they
it.
were bringing them back from where they were,
Maybe.
whereas Tony never was gone.
But-
He was just.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm talking about. That
Can
doesn't
you
matter.
heal? Well, actually,
When you
you
have
know
the
what?
power of the universe in your hands, literally,
The
you can do
Time
anything.
Stone. Because all they had to do with the Time Stone is just like remember how she killed Vision
That-
and destroyed the
no.
Mind Stone in Infinity War.
No,
No, I'm agreeing with you now. I'm
Okay, go
changing
ahead.
my mind.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm wrong with what I said because I was like, I think the snap, you can't snap him back into existence. But then I'm like, oh right, but they destroyed the Mind Stone in Infinity War, and Vision was dead
Mhm.
completely,
Yeah.
and all Thanos did was go crank
Yeah.
back time in this specific area. I'm just gonna crank back time. Oh, Vision gets completely reformed. The Mind Stone's back in
Yeah.
existence. There we go. I'll take it. So they could have just cranked back Tony there before he did
Well,
anything to his
wouldn't that
arm.
crank back the snap too?
I don't think so.
That's how I would see it. But
Because
I'm not
it's
even
not in
talking
his
about
hand
that.
anymore.
But it doesn't matter about the time because
Okay.
you're like still the whole point of the gauntlet is you have the power of anything. You can do anything. You can change anything. People just disappear, come back. You could just bring Tony back because that's how much power the gauntlet has itself.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter about like
They never
whispering them away.
explained the rules
Right.
of
So it doesn't matter.
so-
So the way I see it is there's like unlimited power in that gauntlet
Yeah.
and you could have brought him back.
I mean, I guess the argument might like I think like if you were like really trying to defend the movie on that front, I guess you could be like, well, then Scarlet like why can't Scarlet be
She
back?
can't
Like,
because that was an eternal exchange for that stone, and you can't get her back because of the stone.
isn't that
That's
just as
diff-
much of an
no,
assumption as saying
No, that is exactly why he couldn't get Gamora back. That was it. It was a done deal. That's
We've
for
never
the stone.
seen another example other than Vision though of somebody being brought back to life with the stone either.
Yeah, but you brought everybody back to life.
The
That
snap,
whipped
does-
away. That whisked away. It's the same
that
thing.
sort of counts, but I think that's a little separate.
No, I think it's I think it's just the power of the gauntlet of the universe. You can do anything. Like you could just do whatever you want. Reality can be whatever you want, right?
I mean, you do have a stone called the Reality Stone.
okay,
so...
reality, time, power, everything you can bring back. This you have a soul stone. You bring
Yeah.
the person's soul back into their little body. You could have brought him back. There's no excuse not to. I understand it like impact and like it will all be all like we wouldn't be feeling like this or whatever, or like his sacrifice would be for nothing. But then would it be? Because then he could come back. I'm not saying they should have done that. I'm
Right.
just saying that he
There's
could come
plot
back.
holes, yeah.
You know,
When
if he
you
really
get-
wanted to.
when you get to the point where there's a gauntlet that has the complete control over all of existence, and you can travel through time, and you're switching between timelines, and
Yeah.
there's all these things going on, it gets very difficult to like not write a plot hole in
Yeah.
and still have a good storyline.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the one part where I totally was like there's definitely some plot hole here,
Yeah.
but because the areas that like I mentioned before were so clever, things like Nebula's mind and her memories,
Connection,
and
yeah, and all that.
even like the rat thing, that was like, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
That's not ridiculous. So
Yeah.
there was enough where it was plausible that I think that with the fact that they were coming off of like 22 movies, that Feige created this universe and somehow didn't completely disorganize it
Yeah.
and have it just completely fall apart by this movie. It not only did not fall apart, it's continued to become more and more epic, like larger in scale,
Yeah.
and to bring it to that next step and keep that scale and adding those new elements and that new feel where it doesn't feel like any of the previous Marvel movies. It feel like it stands alone in that it is like a roller coaster, where it starts low and then you go up that like chain lift, and it's like, oh man, this is kind of slow. I wonder when this is gonna pick up, and you hit
Yeah.
the top of the chain lift, and you're like, whoa, like this is ridiculously crazy, and it almost feels like an actual roller coaster.
Yeah.
Whereas like none of the other movies felt that much of like a tonal shift throughout. So I was just so impressed overall.
Yeah. I'm not saying any of like these things make it so bad. It was just like they could have done it. Whether they should have or not is a different story. And it
Yeah.
wouldn't really change anything leading up to it. Just some emotion in the funeral, and then we'd have a better like a happier ending.
Mhm.
But other than that, it's just nothing.
We needed somebody to die too for there to be like any sort of real
Yeah. Or like,
moments at the
so
end.
then they gloss over Scarlet or Black Widow dying.
Yeah, it's like,
And
where's
where's
her
her
funeral?
funeral? Yeah, exactly. So like that was the kind of the real sacrifice,
Yeah.
you know. I will say that about all these like sort of plot hole, sort of ex machina things. They kind of beat a lot us to the punch with the Pym particles. So I was thinking
Oh yeah. I thought
when
that was too.
when they were going back and they only have so many Pym particles, I'm like, hey, you can just go back in time and get Pym particles, so they have enough to go back as many times as you want. But then they just did it anyway when they like fucked up. Like it was like a backup plan to go back.
Yeah.
I was so like, all right, they kind of shut us up.
Yeah. Me and Anna both like exchanged that in the movie theater. We
Yeah.
were like, go and get more particles, and then when it happened, I was like, okay.
Yeah,
like
it happened.
I feel dumb now a little bit. Like
No, like
not dumb, but like that I underestimated it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like that's how you would.
And I thought that was like a nice moment too, where Tony had that moment with his dad.
Oh yeah.
And they really tied up Tony's character so well.
Yeah, in
Like he has such a great.
absolutely.
Not just in this movie, but
I know, like from the
whole
rest
MCU.
the other movies and his character, from like being arrogant, then becoming kind of humble, and like then like scared to shit. Then he needs to like create all these suits around the world, messes up. Still thinks that's the only way to do it is to register everybody because it's safer. He doesn't care about your freedom. He cares about the safety of everybody. And then he's like, "See, I was right." And he like goes back to realizing that what is it all really for? It's to save everybody. So I need to do that anyway.
Yeah, overall, my favorite Marvel movie, definitely like the epic scale of it.
Yeah.
Really pushed it home for me, and I'm like just impressed.
Yeah.
And I can't shrug that off. Infinity War was great, but it was not this complex like this
Okay.
movie was.
Yeah.
This movie was incredibly definitely the most complex of any superhero. In terms of like just this constant change and like, oh my god, now it's going back in time. we start off like depressed and sad, and
Yeah.
it's like this flashbacky, like not flashback, like forward in time 5 years thing, and then like the craziest epic war at the end, in the battle. It just had like everything you could want,
Yeah.
in like a superhero to me. That was like
All
kind of what
right.
I took overall from
Yeah.
the movie.
Okay. So I mean, I wouldn't say. I mean, it had everything in there, but I also think that it just was also like they did good job at doing other things in the movie as far as movie making goes, and like time travel movies go. Like they really just made something that was not just a superhero movie,
Yeah.
and that's why like there was a slow burn with the action up until like Captain America fights himself. That they built the tension up so much, and it didn't really feel like a superhero movie. It felt like a just.
Like a heist movie almost.
I mean, that the heist movie kind of came with like Ant-Man came back,
Right.
but before even like around that, like before it, and then when they were kind of moving into it, it just felt like they just movie with characters that were trying to deal with something. So it was kind of, I wouldn't say grounded, but it was felt more real.
Yeah.
Characters felt more real in this.
This was a very character driven movie.
Yeah,
Whereas I
100%.
think like previous Marvel movies were nowhere near as character driven. This was like characters' decisions based off of the events that occurred, pushing them through the story.
Yeah,
Whereas before it was more like the story was pushing the characters. This movie kind of swapped that, and the characters were the main force of.
yeah,
I think that maybe that's why I like this more, because I think I always tend to lean towards character driven movies and character driven stories more than plot driven stories and movies.
yeah. They
Like I loved Chronicle, for example. That was like so individual character focused.
yeah.
And it didn't even have a plot actually, really, when you think about it in hindsight. It's kind of just these like kids get superpowers. What happens? Let's just try
Yeah.
to write it down on paper, and if one of them turns into a psychopath who kills everybody, well, that's what we'll put in the movie. I don't know.
That's funny.
So
Yeah,
it kind of felt like that sort of vibe to it.
yeah. And I totally like wrapped up this whole era, um, and I'm like it kind of opens the door to have them do some new stuff because they kind of started this franchise sort of mostly based in the comics and really heavily did that, like especially with the origins of the characters and doing all that type of stuff. And yeah, they took some liberties and made things work that were better probably than in from the comics because it wouldn't really work on screen or with the characters. But now that they kind of opened up and showed how they're really good at doing things that are not really, straight by the book in by the comic book basically, they'll be able to just do kind of anything.
I
And
wonder if they'll take that path of the comics where like they'll just be like, "Oh, let's see what happens if, Thor killed everybody, or like, like the whole like Deadpool kills everybody,
yeah,
or like different universe, kind of like what Logan did, where it was like, let's just make a standalone movie where what happens if all the super mutants get, or all the mutants get killed, and it's like Logan left, and there's like
yeah,
one copy of him left, and like what would be the future of the X-Men. So I think it's kind of like cool that like at least Fox started doing that. But now that they've concluded this, they get to do their prequels, they get to do their sequels of their
yeah.
standalone movies. But will they try to continue within this universe and try to just stick to it, or will they decide to throw us like, maybe a 3 movie arc of just like a different universe, something else happened, or where characters are slightly different, or will they just continue?
Right. Well, I think uh they have the ability to go in a different direction and have a different timeline because now it's any timeline that they want
That's
because they
true.
kind of set that up. But from the way they ended this with handing over the shield to Falcon, be
Mhm.
Captain America, and like that happens in the comics, so we can see that him having his own movie or having new Avengers and having him, Scarlet Witch, uh, and like I don't know if Bucky's gonna stick around or Black Panther's gonna be part of it or We have where the Guardians are going because now they have Thor or Spider-Man. He's gonna be part of the Avengers because we know we're getting a Spider-Man movie, but he's gonna come back with the Avengers. Then after that, if it's new Avengers, like headed by Falcon / Captain America. So
It's weird having Falcon be the new Captain America to me.
he doesn't feel leadership. Like
No, he
he
never
was
did.
the second guy. He kind of also he was like that. Him and Bucky both felt like the second in command, where Bucky to me felt like he was lost without Captain America. Captain America would point and Bucky would go and help him do the thing. He wasn't really the guy in charge to know what was going on. He was looked up to him. So like Falcon's like, oh, I'm on your left. I'm here with you. Like I got your back, or like tell me where we're going.
Yeah, they didn't. I don't think that he had, just like with Bucky, he didn't really have a chance to be like a more leadership role in any of the previous movies,
Right.
though. So him getting the shield feels a little weird. Just to me, I guess. Like, I just don't see him as like he's more like comic relief. He was
Like
more
comedian.
kind of
Okay.
like
Yeah.
that sort of role in the movies, me at least. So I don't see him that way, but I'm fine with it because they can always just be like, oh, he rose to the occasion. Like he
Mm.
maybe was goofy before, but now that he's got, now that Cap gave him the
Yeah.
shield and has entrusted him his legacy, I think people can step up to the plate. So maybe
Yeah.
we'll see him in like the next movies if we can. Be more responsible, be more of a leader because he's been giving that respect.
Yeah, I think that he knows how he has to take up the mantle. He always kind of had the.
I mean, we could always just cut this part, but it's like an hour and a half now, just so you know. So like, we really need to like,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, like, thanks
I
for
just kinda
interrupting my
noticed it.
thought.
I'm sorry. I was like, I've been thinking because I'm glancing at it every once in a while.
It's
I'm
fine.
like,
Just leave.
okay,
Okay, I told you
yeah.
this was gonna happen.
Right.
Okay. So
I was making sure you
okay.
knew.
So he's gonna like take up the mantle and kind of follow Captain America because he kind of had his like some almost ideals or his morals that Captain America had. Like he was kind of like the soldier guy, but like he knew that he had to go. Like usually the guys shoot at you, they're shooting at me, type of deal. So he's with him the whole
Mhm.
time, and he knows what's right. So you know that he stands by Cap as far as morals go. Yeah, just didn't have the opportunity to rise to be the leader. Maybe he didn't need to because we had Captain America. He will
Yeah.
when he needs to.
I'm looking forward to seeing like him take on that mantle. But yeah, I think that's pretty much
It's a good,
everything.
yeah. I think it's kind of a blank slate going forward. We don't really know. We just know like the Spider-Man and Black Panther 2
Yeah,
and
there's, like, a
Volume
prequel.
3 of Guardians. But other than that, they that's kind of in their hands. Like we're not gonna get the old, like you said,
Mhm.
the old guard back.
Yeah,
Kinda
no, like
weird.
any Guardians of the Galaxy 2, that's just going to be in a totally different part of the universe. They're just going to have Thor with them now.
Yeah,
James Gunn
yeah,
came back.
yeah.
Did we mention that in a previous podcast? I think we
Probably in
we
like
talked about him.
in a lost episode probably that we don't have. We'll have to
I
find.
know that we talked about him being kicked off of the movie. But then he like was going to be
Yeah.
on Suicide Squad,
Yeah,
and then he got brought back.
yeah,
Which is a really good move on Disney.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Let us know what you think. Where we're headed, and if this was actually a great conclusion. This whole franchise, these 11 years that it's been going on, these characters we've seen.
Yeah, like what if you totally disagree with us on something, like if you love Captain Marvel and you wish he was in the movie more, like definitely let us know. And if you have any good like a good argument to make for it, like include that too. We'd definitely love to hear everyone's opinions on the movie and who everyone's favorite characters were, whether or not you thought Tony dying was like a good or bad, or whether it should have been like Captain America or something like that.
As always, thank you for listening,
Thank you for liking
commenting.
and subscribing.
You can check us out on Instagram at Unstoppable Force Podcast and Twitter at UForcePod.
We'll see you next week. And
until then, stay unstoppable.